voice of Jesus calling, oh, and when today fields are wide and harvest waves and wounded, the seas away. Come and help me say quiet. Loud and long, the master reach when you want. He who will answer, who will answer gladly say, here I am. Say, when the strings are, you cannot speak like angel, and he can not preach like Paul. I tell you what, you can tell the Lord of Jesus. You can say he died for. You can love with the joy, to believe I live let not hear. Welcome to another great episode of Journey Through the Bible. Thank you all for joining us today. I am your host, Derek Entry, and it has been a very long time since we did an episode, that we have done an episode. So much has been going on for the past couple of weeks. We had a youth event, the YASA 2022 event, and then after that I traveled, and then I came back, and there was even programs and events that I had on Saturdays. But now we are back. We're back, and we are back, I think, at the perfect time, because what is it? It's July. It's July. The last time we did an episode, it was towards the beginning of June. We were talking about Moses, and Moses having to flee his home, Moses about to embark on the journey that he would go through so God could prepare and train him to become the person that he was destined to be. And today we see that encounter that Moses has with God. Today we see that encounter that shapes Moses. Throughout his entire life, he was being prepared, being crafted for his calling. And today we see that, we see for ourselves what the calling of Moses was going to be. And I think this came at a perfect time. The topic of calling came at a perfect time, because it's been a long time since we have done an episode. And I wanted to start this episode off checking in with you all mentally. Checking in with you. How have you been doing mentally? How have you been doing physically? How have you been doing spiritually? What are the things that you have been facing? How has life what curveballs have life thrown you? And how have you been able to adapt to your situation that you may have been going through? It is important, it is essential that we check up on ourselves physically, mentally, spiritually. It's important that we reflect on the questions that we ask. Because if from the beginning of the year to now we are still in the same place and we have not grown and we are stagnant, then there is something wrong. From January to July, there must have been a growth. There must have been a change. There must have been a lesson that you learned. If there's nothing that you have learned from the beginning of the year to right now, then there is a big issue. Physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, how have you grown? What situations have you went through? What mistakes have you made? And what lessons have those mistakes taught you? Has your relationship and faith in God grown? You may think you hear these questions and that these are the essential questions that we have to ask ourselves month to month, week to week. Because we cannot stay stagnant. We were not made to stay in the same place. We were not made to be in one place. We were made to move, to grow like fig trees. If you plant a tree, if you plant a seed and it's not growing, it becomes useless. If you plant something and it doesn't grow, you can say the seed is bad, it becomes useless. It doesn't have purpose anymore. But if you continue to water that plant, when it continues to grow, when it continues to move, it has a purpose, it has a reason, it is achieving something. It is growing to achieve a purpose. We must be growing and we must be constantly changing. We must be constantly growing in our faith in God, in our academics, in our physical life, in our mental health. The Bible tells us to take good care of these temples that God has provided us. So what have you been feeding yourself? How have you been feeding your body? How have you been feeding your temple? This temple is a gift from God. How have you been feeding it? How have you been growing it? How have you been using it? What have you been doing with the life that God has given you? We are alive to see another day, and it's by the grace of God. Sometimes we go through our days, especially when it gets to summer, we can go through our days so fast that we forget to breathe and look around at all that God has provided us. We are alive. We are loved. We are surrounded by a community. We are surrounded by a church that loves. We must continue to grow. We must continue to grow. Growth is the most important thing in this life. Because if we grow, then we continue to have a purpose. If we grow, then we continue to learn. We continue to take in more things. We continue to experience growth. Thank you all for joining us for another episode of Journey Through the Bible. It has been a very long time since we brought an episode. And today is not just a mental checkup, but we're also continuing with our story. Let us go to Exodus chapter 3. Exodus chapter 3. And today we're about to learn about the calling of Moses. God called Moses using the burning bush. God spoke to Moses and showed a little bit about the power that he had, and also told Moses what he would become, what he would do for his people. Moses was called. You are called. I am called. We are called. And today we'll embark on a journey to discover the calling of Moses and learn a little bit about our own callings. Moses' call was to lead. Your call could be to sing. Your call could be to preach. Your call could be to teach. Your call could be to play an instrument, to dance. Your call could be to give, to start a company, to start a foundation. Our calls are all different, but we all have a calling. Let us go to Exodus chapter 3. Exodus chapter 3. And so as we begin our story again, one day Moses decided to take his sheep far side of the wilderness. Though it was unfamiliar to his sheep, and this is the one part that I love about even the beginning of the story. Moses took his sheep to the wilderness. Even though the sheep were unfamiliar with the land that they were in, they trusted Moses. Moses had been tending to the sheep for a very long time. And during this time, he had been learning and developing the qualities of a good shepherd. During his time as a shepherd, Moses was learning the compassion, the confidence, the patience, the humility that he would need for what God had called him to go and do. You see, God had been preparing Moses by being a shepherd to eventually go and do what he had called him to do. If it wasn't for the patience, the kindness, the humility, the compassion that he would have learned from what God prepared him to do, that he wouldn't have the essential qualities that he would need for his calling. That's our first lesson. God prepared Moses. God instilled in Moses the qualities that he would need. So when the time came for him to pick up his calling, when the time came for him to embark on his journey, he would be more than ready and more than prepared to do what God had called him to go and do. Moses led and protected his sheep. God was using Moses' time as a shepherd to prepare him for his calling. God does the same with us. God can use our young lives, our young teenagehood, our teenage years, our preteen years, our young adult lives to prepare us for the calling that we have been promised to go and do. And sometimes during this preparation, we will face the most hardship, the most temptation. We'll face the most opinions. It seems like everyone has an opinion on what we are meant to do. But God has to prepare us so that when we are put in where we are supposed to be, we know how to handle ourselves. God had made Moses a shepherd. God put Moses through the shepherd trials and the shepherd temptations and the shepherd struggles, so he would have the qualities that he would later need. Let us continue our story. And eventually Moses came to a canyon where the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that the bush was on fire, but it did not burn up. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called from him within the bush, Moses, Moses, and Moses said, Here I am. Do not come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals, for the place you are standing is a holy ground. Then he said, Am I the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob? And in this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, I've indeed seen the miseries of my people in Egypt. I've heard them crying out because of their slaves. I'm concerned about their suffering. So I've come down to rescue them from the hands of the Egyptians and to bring them out of that land into a good and spacious land, flowing with milk and honey. And now the cry of the Israelites have reached me, and I have seen that the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? And God said, I will be with you, and this will be the sign to you that it is I am who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. Moses said to God, Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, The God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, What is his name? Then what shall I say to them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. That is what you are to say to the Israelites. I have sent me to you. God also said to Moses, Say to the Israelites, The Lord, the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This in my name forever, the name you shall call for me from generations to generations. Go assemble the elders of Israel and say to them, the Lord God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has appeared to me and said, I have watched over you and have seen what you have done and what has been done to you in Egypt. And I've promised to bring you out of the misery in Egypt into that promised land. The elders of Israel will listen to you. Then you and the elders are to go to the king of Egypt and say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. Let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to the Lord our God. But I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless a mighty hand compels him. So I'll reach out my mighty hand and strike the Egyptians with all the wonders that I will perform among them. After that, he will let you go. Ladies and gentlemen, here we are seeing a God who sees and a God who hears. Before we get to our big topic, our big message for this program, I want us to go back to verse 7. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the miseries of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out of their slave drivers. I am concerned about their suffering. So I've come down to rescue them from the hands of the Egyptians and bring them into the promised land. I have indeed seen the misery of my people, and I have heard their crying. We are serving a God who not only sees, but a God who hears. We are serving a God who is powerful enough to not only see, but to hear. Not only does he see me and you, he sees all that we go through. He hears all that we go through. And I want to use this quickly as a word of encouragement that God not only sees, but he hears. Whatever struggle, whatever challenge, whatever issue that we may be facing, whether it is sin, whether it's issues, financial issues, whether it's relationship issues, whatever situation that we may be going through, we are serving a God that sees and a God that hears. So give it all to God. Allow God into your heart. Allow God into your space. And allow him to rescue you from the hands of those who are trying to bring you down. And let us go into our main message for today. I am called. I am called. You are called. The first thing that I want us to be clear is that all of us are called by God, no matter our age. We are all called by God to praise his name, to draw people closer to him, to go and make disciples of all nations, and to spread the word of God. We are all called by God. It is the journey to discover the calling and the understanding of what that calling is that changes from person to person. We are all called by God. I'm called, you're called. It is our journey, and it is understanding what our calling is that changes. For you, your calling may be to organize a youth group. To me, my calling could be to preach. To another person, their calling could be to sing, or they have a voice of an angel that God has gifted them. Our calling can change from person to person, but every person on this earth has a call. And now I want us to understand that there are 4 stages of life. And in each stage of life, we understand, we accomplish, we surround ourselves with different people. But each stage is important and crucial in this life. We have the copying stage, the self-discovering stage, the work and family stage. This is the age, usually you're in your 30s to your 50s. You have a family, you're established, you're working, you're more committed to life. Life is more stable. And then we have our stage 4, the retirement and enjoyment age. This is 65 and up. You have retired from your career. You're enjoying the fruits of your labor. You have money to spend. You have more free time. You've done with a long life career. And today, the first two stages of life that I want us to really focus on is the copying stage and the self-discovery stage. A lot of my audience, a lot of the people that watch us are in that self-discovery stage, including myself. Our first stage, the copying stage. In the first decade from age 0 to 10 in our lives, we are kind of born helpless. We cannot walk, we cannot talk, we cannot feed ourselves, and we depend on our parents and guardians to survive. During that age, we begin to learn by watching and mimicking others. First, we learn to do physical things. We learn to walk and talk, copying and looking at how our parents do it. Then we develop social skills by watching and mimicking our peers around us. And then in our late childhood, we begin to adapt to our cultural and society norms. We begin to take on our family values. We begin to learn to behave in public. We learn how to behave at school. We learn how to control and manage our emotions to a certain extent. We learn to identify what our emotions are. That first stage is that copying stage. Stage 2, self-discovery. And this is the stage that even me, myself, I am in right now. This is from age 11 to around 29. This is the most crucial, in my opinion, this is the most important stage in our life. Because this is the learning and mistake era. This is the stage in your life where you can make the most mistakes, and to a certain extent, it doesn't have a big of an impact. But at the same time, this is the stage where you begin to build your foundation. This is the era that most of us young people are in right now. We go from preteens to teenagers to young adults. This is the stage where our body can go through the most growth, the most development. And mind and body are constantly going, changing, going through a lot, constantly developing. This is the most important stage. Because this stage is where we begin to lay down our foundation for the rest of our life. During this stage, we begin to either build habits that will help us in life to succeed or that will help us in life to crumble. What you do at this age, no matter what anybody tells you, what you do at this age matters. Because at this age, you're forming the habits that are going to help you either succeed in life or that are going to hurt you in your later life. What habits are you building at this age? If you decide to give into peer pressure and smoke and drink, how will it later affect you in stage 3 and stage 4 in your life? What habits that you are building now set up how the rest of our life can go? During this stage, I urge you all, this is the most important stage that we must focus. We must focus on working on ourselves spiritually, academically, physically, and mentally. Don't do one without the other. What good is it if you are academically smart but spiritually lacking? What good is it if you are academically excellent but physically you can't do anything? What good is it is if you're physically strong but emotionally you're not intelligent? This is the stage that we must learn to be physically, spiritually, academically, mentally, and emotionally strong. We must focus. And it is important to focus because this is the stage that we are starting to build the foundation for the rest of our life. We must allow God in our lives, especially during this stage. because this is a stage that we are hit with so much peer pressure, so much temptation from all around the world. We are consumed to so much of the world that sometimes it can be hard to see the world and God. During this stage, we must focus. This isn't the stage of our lives that we play around and we think, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. This is the stage in our life that we begin to build the habits. We must learn, we must educate ourselves. And I don't mean just in school, but we must educate ourselves about life, grow social skills, learn to start a business, learn how to drive, learn financial skills. This is the age that we must focus. And this is also the stage in our life where we go through an identity crisis. And I believe that this is also the stage, because of that identity crisis, that God prepares us for our calling. I believe that God uses that identity crisis then that we go through a little bit to prepare us for our calling. During this stage, our faith is tested. Because during this stage, we have bad company that could corrupt us. We have the negative sides of social media. We have negative peer pressure coming at us. We have the stress of trying to prepare our lives, prepare for college, prepare for our young adult lives. This is the stage that left and right, it seems like everyone is trying to grab or draw or pull our attention. This is the stage, and I think that that's what makes it perfect this stage makes it perfect for God to use us. Because there can be so much that's going on. When God comes into our life, it helps us to calm down. It helps us to focus. During this self-discovery stage, we can be hit with so much. Mentally, we're going through a lot. Physically, we're going through a lot. And that's what makes it perfect for us to find God in this stage. Because when we find God in this stage, the distractions begin to leave us. When we allow God in to prepare us for our calling during this stage, we can experience things that will equip us to be better at what God has called us to do. During this stage in our life, we're tested with so much. With peer pressure, the negative sides of social media, with drugs, sex, whatever it may be. And that's what makes it kind of perfect for God to call us. In today's story, we learn that before Moses became the leader that he became, he was a shepherd. During this time, God was training him to become the person that he was destined to be, a leader, a mentor for the people of the Israelites. If it were not for the skills that he learned as a shepherd tending to his flock, he would not have gained the patience or the humility that he would need for his call. This stage, God is preparing us for our calling. We are going through the identity crisis, the hardship, the headaches maybe, so that God can prepare us. Sometimes we look at it as, oh, the devil's trying to do this. Oh, sometimes it's God trying to prepare us so that we can understand what our calling is. Sometimes it's God trying to sharpen us for what our calling is going to be. Because during this stage, we are hit with the most temptation, peer pressure. But if we learn to find God and we learn to stand firm in our faith, when we enter our calling, nothing will stop us. Ephesians chapter 2 verse 10 says, "For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand, that we should walk in him." He has called us to a certain task that has been designed for us. God is at this stage of our lives, God is in the process of equipping each of us for the purpose that he has designed us. For you, your purpose could be to preach, to mentor, to lead, to sing. For you, your purpose could be to look over people, to teach people, young people. Our purpose is different. For you, your purpose could be to sit, to learn, to teach people how to make millions. Whatever your purpose could be, your purpose is designed specifically for you. Many of us tend to remove ourselves from those that God has called because of the mistakes or things that we have done. I want us to realize that the beauty of this stage is that we can mess up as many times as we want. But if we find God and truly repent from our sins, He is just and faithful to forgive us. What makes God special is that despite our past mistakes, despite what we may have done, He can see past everything and look into our heart. Do not forget that God is all-knowing and knows everything and anything that we will ever do. We would not be alive if we did not have a purpose or task on this earth. God creates every single thing on this earth for a purpose. Everything on this earth, every single thing on this earth has a purpose. God would not waste His time to create something that was purposeless. Then it wouldn't exist. But everything on this earth has been created with a purpose, including you and me. You were not a mistake. You were not an accident. You were created with purpose and filled with purpose. And what you see as your faults through your human eyes, God can see as your perfection and your purpose. I want to repeat it. What you can see through your human eyes as faults, God sees those things as perfection and purpose. Look through the Bible. Moses had a speech problem. Paul persecuted the Christians that he would later worship and serve with. David committed adultery and murder. Peter denied Jesus 3 times. Jonah ran away from God's calling. Rachel was a prostitute. Despite all of their faults, God used them. Do not think that what you have been through or what you are doing right now unqualifies you for what God has called you to do. You still have a calling. Will you answer the calling? If you have not answered the calling throughout this entire year, this is the time to say, God, I want to answer my calling and use me to do your works. It is never too late. You can go through the Bible. Everyone in the Bible at one point or another made a mistake, but God still used them. Everyone in the Bible at one point or another had a fault or a flaw, as we would consider, but God still used them. Are you willing and ready to allow God in? Are you willing and ready to allow God to use you? Moses wasn't perfect, not by any means. The man made mistakes. The man made thousands and countless mistakes. But God still said, that is the person that will lead my people. In all of creation, I designed Moses for this specific task. In all of creation, God has designed you for your specific task. Are you willing and ready to let Him in? If throughout the year, if you have not grown closer with God, or if your relationship has fallen off, this is your chance to say, God, I want to get back. God, return me to the flock. God, use me for what you have planned for me to do. It is never too late. Seek forgiveness in God and allow Him to use you. The only thing that you need to do is make yourself available. Because God has been knocking on your door for decades. God has been knocking on your door for years and years and years. Are you willing and ready to let Him in and use you for what He has planned you to do? And use you to save those people. Use you to save that community, that church, that family, that school. one person can truly make that difference. We tend to think, how can I make such a big change? When you have the power of God inside you, nothing is impossible. Moses thought to himself, how can I, one man, convince a king to let all these people go? Look what God used him to do. With God, nothing is impossible. So are you ready to answer your calling so God can use you for what he has destined you to do? Your mistakes or your struggles do not remove you from the equation. Your anxiety, your depression, your mental illness, your physical illness do not remove you from the equation. Your past struggle with lust or anger or jealousy or gossip does not remove you from the equation. We are all called by God. We're all made by God, filled with a purpose. You are not too small or too big to be used by God. Remember, Moses said, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? And look how God is answered. God said, I will be with you. And if you know the book of Exodus, look how it turned out. Abraham had that same encounter, and look how God used him. Isaac had that same encounter. Look how God used him. Jacob had that same encounter. Look how God used him. Joseph had that same encounter. Look how God used him. And it's not just men in the Bible, women too. We are all called by God. The song, one of my favorite hymns, Hark the Voice of Jesus Call It. It says, if you cannot cross the ocean and distant lands explore, you can find the lost around you. You can help them at your door. If you cannot give your thousands, if you cannot give widows mite, you can truly give for Jesus, will be precious in his sight. If you cannot speak like angels, if you cannot preach like Paul, you can tell the love of Jesus. You can say he died for us all. If you cannot rouse the wicked with judgment, dread, alarm, if you cannot lead the little children to the Savior's waiting arm, if you cannot be the watchman standing high on Zion's wall, pointing out the path to heaven, offering life and peace to all, nothing stops us from our calling. Not location, not people, not time, not our age. We are called. Nothing stops us. Not access to technology or money. Nothing stops you from your call. Allow God to prepare you so he can use you. If you cannot be the watchman, standing on Zion's well, pointing out the path to heaven, offering life and peace to all, with your prayers and with your bounties, you can do what heaven demands and be like a faithful Aaron, holding up that prophet's hand. No matter what, we can do something for God. Are you willing and ready?
Oh, Jesus, calling, and work today fields are wide and harvest wait, and the sheep away. Come and help me say quiet. Loud and long, the master reach me on. He who will answer, let me say, he when the strings up, you cannot speak like angel, and you cannot preach like Paul. I tell you what, you can tell. The blood of Jesus. You can say He died for all. If you can love with the judgment, with strength,